This is Washington Policy Center's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of Education. We break down the latest in what's happening in education policy for Washington State and how to create the best future for parents and students. Welcome to the show. My name is Donald Kimball. I'm here with our Education Director, Liv Finna. This is a weekly series where we are bringing you the latest in education, both nationally and in Washington State. We're going to open with about 5 minutes on what's happening nationally and then move into some of the bills we'll be seeing this week in Washington. So, Liv, start us out by looking at the national trends in school choice. What are you seeing?
Well, many people know already that 10 states have passed universal school choice in the last 2 years since the COVID school shutdowns. These states are leading the nation and basically bringing a tsunami of school choice across the country, which means that people are being given public dollars so they can send their children to private schools. So between $4,000 and $8,000, depending on the state. And so what I'm seeing just recently is that this happened. I've been reporting about this happening in the last 2 years, but it's continuing. It's continuing. Over the weekend, I saw that Idaho is going to consider a universal school choice bill in their legislative session. I saw that Missouri is going to consider one. I saw that the state of Tennessee is going to consider one. So this is not stopping, which is so amazing and so exciting. And you'll recall that I was following the state of Texas, and Texas nearly passed a universal school choice bill, but that was held up by some recalcitrant rural Republicans, and those Republicans who opposed the governor's school choice bill are now facing primary challengers who do support school choice. So that's one very exciting event on school choice continuing.
Excellent. Before we move on to our next topic, I just want to say, how does it look in places where school choice has been enacted? Is it bankrupting states like Arizona? Is it causing all kinds of disasters? What are we seeing from the states that have moved forward already?
What we have seen is an amazing take-up by the people. Given the chance, in the state of Arizona, 70,000 people have signed up for their new universal school choice program, so they can send their children, so they can get about $7,000 to send their children to private schools. So the response from the public has been dramatic. Big thousands, you're talking about tens of thousands of people signing up for these programs, which tells you how much they're needed and wanted by the people in their states. Of course, the defenders of the established schools are yelling, the world is coming to an end, and they're fear-mongering and saying that it's going to bankrupt states, but it's not going to bankrupt states, because even in the state of Arizona, with 70,000 people signing up, it's about a $900 million cost, well within the budget of the state. So it's not a problem. We can afford to have well-funded public schools existing at the same time as expanded school choice. It is not a problem. And so what is happening is a flourishing of options and a creation of new private schools that are responding to the demands and wishes of parents, so that parents can find schools that are more aligned with what they want their children to be exposed to. It's super exciting. I mean, we can go on forever about the different kinds of new private schools that are cropping up now with a state-supported funding, but driven by parents to these schools.
Excellent. Well, before we move into Washington, one other thing we wanted to look at nationally is a seeming response to the DEI initiatives, especially when it comes to the president of Harvard. So what are we seeing there, and what does it mean?
Well, it's amazing. As most people that are following this issue know, the president of Harvard University, Claudine Gay, was forced to resign because she was unable to articulate a protection of Jewish students on their campus. This came out of the congressional hearing, as you'll recall, where she was unable to say that it violates the code of conduct at Harvard to yell for the genocide of the Jews. And so that revealed that she is under the influence of this harmful, anti-Semitic, racist ideology that has taken over many institutions like Harvard. And that fact, and then the fact that she had plagiarized a lot of her work, brought her down. But what's I find extremely encouraging is this drama at Harvard and at University of Pennsylvania, whose leader also stepped down and now is moving to the MIT leaders. This drama is showing the entire country that we have to do something about the ideology of critical race theory, DEI, that's in the schools, that is indoctrinating teachers and students in an ideology that's false, that's been made up by radical ideologues in the academia, that needs to be taken out. And so I've been writing a lot about this here in Washington State. I'm hoping that our leaders will repeal Senate Bill 5044 and the other laws that require our teachers in our public education institutions to be trained in this ideology. And so that's why I was so excited about the possibility that, the reality that now the world is learning what is in DEI and how damaging it is. And look what it's done to the reputation of one of the best universities in our country, Harvard University. There's been a drop of 17% in applications to Harvard. There's been a withdrawal of $1 billion of donor support to Harvard because now the whole world is finding out that this ideology is anti-Semitic, anti-merit, racist, bad. Okay, so I'm very encouraged that this is happening. I'm hoping it continues, and we should be opening our eyes to what's happening here in Washington State. I'm going to be writing more about this in the future.
Great. Well, we'll move on and we'll follow up with any more national news in our next episode next week. But let's move and see what we're going to have happen in Washington State when it comes to legislative bills that are being proposed. What are you seeing? What do we have on the docket?
Well, this week, okay, you know that there's like thousands of bills. There were 200 new House bills, 300 new Senate bills, and then the 1,000 or so bills from the previous, from last year that are going to maybe considered. So the only way we can handle this is to go week by week, obviously. So this week, I am going to be looking at several bills. One in the House Education Committee, which is House Bill 2058, which would change the prototype school funding model, which establishes the ratios of staff to students in the schools and basically divides funding to the schools based on these ratios. This bill would increase non-teaching staff in the schools, which, Donald, everybody knows that the children in Washington State are still under the damage caused by the extended COVID school shutdowns during the COVID emergency, and that the students in Washington State are not meeting basic minimal state standards in reading and math, and that they need help. They need individual tutoring help to recover their lost learning. So I'm going to testify against this bill because it is not focusing on the emergency. Number one, it's adding non-teaching staff to the schools. That I have a alleged memo prepared to show that the schools, 49% of total school staff in in the K-12 schools are already non-teaching staff. We have 12,000 aides. We have thousands of other types of non-teaching staff already. They need to make better use of the existing staff if they need to do extra work to help students. But we certainly don't need to expand the public school system with non-teaching staff. So that's one bill, and that is heard on Thursday at 8 a.m. before the House Education Committee. The other three bills will be heard in the Senate that I'm going to be testifying on will be heard in the Senate Education Committee the previous day on Wednesday, the 10th of January at 10:30 a.m. No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. That bill, I messed up the numbers. This is bad. I mean, okay, let me straighten myself out here. The bill to increase the prototype schooling is Senate Bill 5882, and that's going to be heard on Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. in the Senate Education Committee. That bill I'm going to oppose. Another bill that same day before the same committee is the effort to abolish the constitutional taxpayer protection clause, which requires a 60% majority vote to pass a long-term debt for school construction. We've opposed that for many years in a row. They keep trying to push it because, of course, to impose long-term debt on our communities increases the cost of housing. It makes it harder for young families to buy a new house. It makes it hard for retired people on fixed incomes. We oppose this taxpayer protection that's served us well for 70 years in our Constitution, and I'll testify against that again. And then another bill that is actually positive in that same Education Committee is Senate Bill 5809, which would make more equitable the funding that we provide for our public charter schools. Because as you know, Donald, we have a discriminatory policy. If you decide to go to a public charter school, your child will not get the local portion of funding that you as a taxpayer pay for. So that will do if that passes. That has been attempted in the past. The union has blocked it in the past, but I'm more and more optimistic about that because I see more moderate Democrats signing on with all the Republicans to do the fair thing by our public charter school students. So that's on Wednesday, the 10th, before the Senate Education Committee. There's another bill on Thursday, which I had confused the date, at 8 a.m. before the House Education Committee. And that is House Bill 2058, which would give free meals to every child in Washington state schools, whether or not they need that free meal. And I consider that an anti-family bill because it's undermining the role of the family to feed the child. And I do not like that bill. We already have programs to feed children who are low income, who are on free and reduced lunch, and that's fine. But we should not expand that to cover all families. Families are responsible for feeding their children. The state should not take over that job. And so I will be testifying against that. So and then there is another one that I just noticed on the 10th of January, Wednesday, before the House Committee on the State Government and Tribal Relations, which is a bill, House JR 4208, which would remove gendered terms in the state constitution. Okay, and they have to pass a constitutional amendment to do this. So that's why they have a House joint resolution to start off the discussion. And I'm going to testify against that because this gets us back to the whole DEI conversation we started with, which is so harmful to start reducing people, by eliminating your gender, to making the Constitution, without a gender is just part of the whole ideology of critical race theory, DEI, and I oppose it, and we should not allow it to move forward. So that's what's on the dock for this week.
Sounds like quite a busy week for you. Lots of testimonies. Let's push back on some of the ideas. Let's go back to the student meal idea. Proponents of this might say, well, we're treating students unequally if we provide some meals for some and not for others. What would you say? What's the problem with providing meals for everyone and treating all students fairly?
Well, the problem is that first of all, parents are responsible for feeding their children, and the state should not be dividing parents from children using meals. It's so fundamental, and so there's efforts that I see that the state is trying to push, take over control of various aspects of raising a child, and providing health clinics in the schools, providing mental health counselors, there's this movement from the far left to divide parents from their children. That has been expressed in the Parents Initiative that was, one of the 6 initiatives that Let's Go Washington collected and signatures for. One of the most solidly supported initiatives is the Parent Notification Initiative, that requires the schools to notify parents about what's going on in the schools, what the curriculum is, and so forth. And that is rising out. That initiative rose out of this concern that the state is trying to intrude itself in the sacred bond between child and parent. And this free meals for families who can well afford to pay for their son or daughter's lunch is just another example, just slow encroachment in this way. So I see it as bigger than just meals. Okay, I see it as the state intervening where they don't belong, and parents are standing up to this. They don't like it, and I also don't like the fact that this may be a political talking point for people running for office. It's not right to be, using giving out freebies to win political power.
Yeah, it does seem as though it's another transfer of wealth that is not even based on need, right? When you target everyone, you're ending up paying for people who can well afford it and taking money from taxpayers who maybe can't afford as much. So it does seem like when you expand these programs to include all people, it's hard to narrow down the need based approach then.
Well, the taxpayer resources are precious, and they should
Exactly.
be spent on educating children, not feeding them. It costs a lot of money to set up these big lunchrooms, to provide the food, to serve the food, to clean up the food. And so what administrators in these school districts find themselves doing is managing this huge feeding apparatus, and it distracts from the central mission of educating the children. And that's another argument against this, is that what are you going to do? You're going to start restaurants in schools? I mean, this is not your job. Your job is to get back to teaching English and math and preparing children for their futures. And you're getting distracted. This happens in businesses all the time. They get distracted from their central mission and then they go under, but not the public education system. It just demands more money. So that's why I oppose this. I think it's the wrong-headed move.
Yeah. Scope creep is a very powerful destroyer of projects in all kinds of areas. So this definitely can be one of the things. Well, thank you so much, Lieve. We're going to come back next week. We're going to have all new news for you, again, both nationally and in the state. We'll see you on that episode.
Thank you very much, Donald.